Hallo meine lieben Freunde, today we're gonna put together the best calisthenics pull exercises, starting with the very easiest, most beginner friendly one and working our way up to some of the most advanced stuff you have ever seen or tried out for yourself. So if you're ready, let's go and have some fun. Starting with the easiest calisthenics pull exercise, wall pulls. You're gonna grab yourself a door frame or whatever you can use to pull yourself towards a wall and reverse the entire movement. The longer you can make your range of motion, the better this exercise will be, which means that we want to lengthen our arms, lengthen our shoulders, flare our lats and round our back into complete spinal flexion before we engage our entire back musculature. You don't need a lot of resistance to activate every single muscle strand in your back. And of course, moving up a level from this one is as easy as removing a hand. Keep it behind your back if you want to. And once again, longest possible range of motion, pull and reverse. Engage your biceps and back musculature as much as you can, and then lengthen as long as you can. Easy peasy, lemon squeeze. Moving up a tiny level to some classic jackknife pulls for people who do not yet have the strength to go through classic pull-ups. We want to bend in our hips, and we can even help the slightest bit with our legs. Pull your chest all the way to that bar and reverse. You can sit down completely. We even have a nice stretch in our posterior chain before we go into that pulling motion once more. A good beginner-friendly exercise, even just to warm up before you go into real pull-up work. And this moves us to one of the most amazing calisthenics pulling exercises, which is the reverse barbell row. And what makes that exercise so goddamn effective is that it is one of the most adjustable calisthenics pulling exercises, meaning the more you go parallel to the ground, by lowering the bar, the harder the exercise will become. But not just that, you can also shift the main focus of our pull by switching from an overhand grip, which is very back muscle and latissimus dominant, to an underhand grip, which will be way more biceps dominant, so we can switch between working on our lats and working on our biceps, as well as increasing the intensity by lowering the bar step by step. Moving us up the ladder to one of my favorites, the assisted behind the back pull. And I love this exercise because there is a lot of trap engagement that we usually do not get from pulling towards our chest, which means that we can work on our scapular control, which means controlling our shoulder blades in the pull, which is going to help us immensely with the next exercise, which will be one of the most important calisthenics pulling foundations you will ever learn. Nein, ich übertreibe nicht. This is no exaggeration. Scapular pull-up is one of the most important calisthenics foundational exercises that sadly goes way too neglected, because you are learning how to activate not only your scapular musculature, but you are learning the main scapular positioning. We want to go into scapular depression and adduction, as well as scapular elevation and abduction. Pull them down and together, as well as all the way up and apart. The longer the range of motion, you can even add the tiniest bit of upward rotation in your scapula to go through a longer range of motion, as well as bending the slightest bit in your arm to do the same. And trust me on this one, if you can master the scapular pull-up, you will have such an easy life when it comes to the more advanced pull-up variations, which should be one of your goals anyway, if you want to advance more when it comes to calisthenics. And the good thing about that is that taking this to the next level, also one of the foundational movement patterns, is super easy. because that would be the asymmetrical scapular pull-up. And if you have been paying attention, this is basically half the lateral pull-ups or the archer pull-ups we're doing before. It's all about positioning your scapula in the right direction, as well as activating the muscles responsible for moving it. And this is what you've been waiting for. We can finally move on to some of the more beginner-friendly pull-up exercises. Starting with the chin up, which is a biceps dominant pull-up, meaning we're using an underhand grip to focus more on our arm strength and less on activating our back musculature. This is usually one of the easiest and one of the first pull-up variations you will ever learn. And if you put that one together with the scapular pull-up, especially the symmetrical as well as the unilateral one, then it will be much easier to advance to what is coming next. But before I show you what that is, we're gonna go through a second biceps dominant variation, which is the hockey grip pull-up. You're interlacing your hands and you're pulling towards your shoulder. Now, I don't have enough space to pull to the other shoulder. However, you should be switching between left side and right side just so you don't end up fully imbalanced. And now, the main pull-up dish, like I said, if you've learned the last couple of exercises and you've perfected them when it comes to form, you should have zero problems with executing a perfect latissimus dominant or back dominant overhand grip pull-up. And this is the variation that most people will learn and most people focus on getting as many reps in as possible. However, we're not most people. We want to advance even more and want to learn even more interesting and more advanced stuff. And once you can do a handful of perfect repetitions of this one, then we can finally move on to some of the more fun calisthenics pulling exercises. Which means that before we go into the lateral pulls and the circular pulls, we want to go for one more very important variation, and that will be the tucked lever pull, which means we're going to start out in a tucked front lever, and all we want to do from here is pull our legs towards our hands and slowly reverse, lengthening our latissimus as much as we can before pulling up once more. And this one has a lot of core engagement, which means we're gonna pull our legs in as closely as possible. We're gonna stay like this, keeping our core fully engaged, and we're gonna pull up as much as we can, or as much space as is allowed for us to pull up. Lengthening our range of motion to get out as much as we can from this movement, especially in the negative position, so we can get a nice little lat spread, a nice stretch in our latissimus, which feels absolutely amazing anyway. And this moves us to one of my favorite pull-up variations and what you see in almost all of my videos, which is, of course, to no one's surprise, the archer pull-up. And we want to keep one arm fully extended and bring that shoulder above the bar before we reverse diagonally and repeat. And this exercise will teach you an absurd amount of strength as well as control, especially around our shoulder and our scapular musculature, which in turn will help us with our mobility in the long run. Being able to go through this entire movement will keep your shoulder healthy, loose and limber. And since the rotator cuff is one of the spaces where people develop the most problems, this can keep you from injuring your shoulder by learning how to control, activate, as well as stretch the surrounding musculature. Moving us to the next level of pulling exercises, being the Typewriter pull-up, which puts together the latissimus dominant classic pull-up as well as the lateral movements of the archer, which means that we are pulling up to the middle and switching directions at the top of the movement, and only then we can reverse to the middle and get back into our starting position. It has a lot of biceps inclusion and a lot of shoulder inclusion through the lateral movement, as well as an insane amount of required control and strength to go through the entire length of the movement, especially if you want to have good form. Peak efficiency exercise, learn it, do it as often as you can till you get very good at it, because you're gonna need it for the next exercise. Now, this is the culmination of everything we've learned today. We're gonna put all of it together into one singular movement that activates every single muscle in your entire upper body, even your chest, although this is a pulling motion, which is an absolute insane bonus to have when it comes to pulling exercises. And that is the complete circular pull-up, which starts with an archer, moves to a typewriter, reverses in an archer, and we want to switch directions with every single rotation. The longer your range of motion, the better, which means that if you want to work yourself up to this level, you can actually start with very tiny rotations and over time open up your grip to longer and longer rotational movements. Having our arm up here extended means that we need to keep those muscles tight in order not to fall down, as well as while pulling, we need to activate our chest musculature as well. Pull that arm in and reverse. That's a nice movement you are a master of if you are an advanced calisthenics practitioner. Moving on to the final exercise for today, and while it is not a pulling exercise per se, you should add it to every single pulling workout you do. It doesn't matter if it's with weights or calisthenics, I don't care. You have to do this exercise. And that is a passive or dead hang. Grab the bar and relax into the hanging position as much as you can. Not only is that very good for all the grip strength we need for pulling exercises, but it decompresses every single joint, muscle, tendon, and ligament in our entire body, especially if you have any sort of tightness around or in your shoulders and around or in your lumbar spine. This is absolutely amazing at releasing all of that. And it's also pretty great at priming your hands for all those calluses you will be building if you truly want to advance in those categories. And there you go, more pulling exercises than you could ever wish for, and enough to keep you busy for at least a handful of years if you truly want to master all of them. All you're missing now for your upper body is the pushing exercises. And if you want to master those too, check out this video. With that said, sadly, that's all the time I have left for you today. If you like the video and subscribe, because we literally have new ones every single day, which means that I will see you tomorrow. Captain Cairo. Peace out.